Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking time to listen to this call. Today's January 18th, 2023. We still find ourselves in pre-RV purgatory, but things are moving in the right direction. There's a lot going on. I'm getting a lot of information from a lot of different sources. Also have a lot of our clients contacting us because the information in Iraq strongly suggests that they're moving toward the reinstitution of their currency. So the call is going to be a little different today. I've got stuff just piled up everywhere, and I'm going to jump around, so it may seem a little bit disjointed. I usually have a format, but we're going to set that to the side today. There won't be a Q&A because, as I say, I'm going to be jumping around, and so let's just go ahead and get started. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. And the most relevant piece of information, certainly from our perspective, would be the window for the reinstitution of the dinar in country. I still continue to believe not that the dinar will, but that it could reinstitute in country at any time. There's a lot going on, so let's just kick through this information and see where it leads us. First, I want to talk a little bit about what Prime Minister Sudani is doing. He is really picked up where Kazemi left off, and he's moving everything in the right direction. He's consummating banking, trade, import, export, and infrastructure contracts globally. He's developed contracts with countries in the Middle East, with Europe, and the Far East. The two most notable right now from my perspective is first the substantial oil deal they did with Germany. Now, Germany, of course, is a major player in the EU, but Germany also had an arrangement to purchase oil from Russia, and that deal, of course, would be undercut by the oil deal with Iraq, so that's an important deal. And the other thing is the infrastructure deal that Iraq has struck with the Saudis. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons, but most notably because it's a direct pushback with Iran. What's happening with Iran is that, in a sense, the walls are closing in on Iran. The international community has basically told them, if you want to see the real revalue, you're going to need to behave yourself. And the Saudis, the Sunnis, are assisting Iraq, which is in essence a Shia nation, a moderate Shia nation, pushing back against Iran, which of course is the government of Iran is a more radical Shia nation. So there's a lot going on. It's not just about their currency. There's a lot of geopolitical moves moving as well. But the net result with regard to what Sudani is up to is he is in the process through all of these contracts diversifying revenue sources for the country, and that's one of the things that people wanted to see. Now let's talk a little bit about the CBI action because there's a lot going on there. The CBI, of course, is proceeding with the National Education Program. As a matter of fact, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but there's supposed to have been a press conference with the CBI today to discuss the subject of the change in the exchange rate. The CBI has also put the Kurdistani banks on notice for some of their nefarious money laundering activities. They've also introducing through the Zain phone company a new app which will allow citizens to have real-time information about exchange rates, release of the new lower denoms, which is important. Because why would they need real-time information unless there were going to be changes in the exchange rate? The other thing, maybe a small thing, but it's notable, recently the CBI has been using the term new currency. Now, it makes absolutely no sense to say new currency if you're talking about a currency with the same rate or in a program rate. That only makes sense if what they mean by new currency is a new rate. So this is all very good news. But both domestically and in terms of international agencies, there's a real push for the CBI to go ahead and reinstitute the currency. The IMF, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, and even the United States Treasury is officially calling for the CBI to reinstitute. The Parliamentary Committee for Human Rights is asking for a change in the exchange rate. The Minister of Finance is calling for a change in the exchange rate. Now, the CBI operates independently. It can change the exchange rate unilaterally without the quote-unquote permission or approval of anyone. And that's always been the case. But what's different now is that agencies, organizations, and individuals that do have clout outside of the CBI are now asking the CBI to make a change. So it's no longer a question of the CBI going against the grain and changing the exchange rate. It's a situation now where everyone wants them to change the exchange rate. Then there's the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank, which, as you know, recently sanctioned about a dozen Iraqi banks for money laundering. But now the Federal Reserve Bank of the U.S. is reducing access to the U.S. dollar through auctions. What this means is that the Iraqi banks are going to be limited to the amount of IQD they can use to purchase the USD. This, in turn, forces citizens to use their own currency for the purchase of goods and services. And since the Iraqi Dinar substantially limits the amount that they can purchase, they are, in essence, pushing the CBI, once again, to change the exchange rate so that their own currency has purchasing power. So this is all very good news. The gravitational force is for the reinstitution of the currency. So there are a lot of ways this can be accomplished. In my opinion, what I think is going to happen is that we went just recently from 1600 to 1460 or 70. I think from there they may go back to 1190, and from there go to 1-to-1 with the USD in country. Once that happens, then I expect there to be a float on the Forex. Now, from the moment they go 1-to-1 in country to reinstitute to when they float the Forex, we don't have a time frame for that, but it looks like we are moving quickly to a 1-to-1 reinstitution in country, and that's really good news. Now, why is it that I think that the dinar will reinstitute and eventually revalue it? Why do I believe it's not an if question, but a when question? Well, it's something that I've touched on numerous times in the past, but I think it requires mentioning once again. But first I have to start with Basel compliance. We talk about this, it's kind of an esoteric term, but what Basel compliance is, in essence, it's a 5-phase transition from fiat-based currencies to commodity-backed currencies. Now, this is a global measure of value of a currency, and it eliminates the ability of central banks of various nations to manipulate the value of their currency. And one of the things that has happened is that countries like China have artificially devalued their currency so that they can basically take control of international trade. And Basel III compliance in the end will not only have a reasonable value of currencies from the central banks in countries based on the underlying natural resources of that country and their ability to bring those resources to market, but it will eliminate the ability of nations to artificially devalue their currency in order to get a leg up on international trade. Now, this is important from our perspective in terms of the reinstitution because I believe it can be argued that per square mile, Iraq may be one of the richest, if not the richest countries in the world. And I want to talk a little bit about why that's the case. Again, remember, under Basel compliance, the currency's value is based on the underlying known natural resources of that country and their ability to bring those resources to market within 5 years. So let's talk a little bit about Iraq and their natural resources. Iraq has the second largest known oil reserves in the Middle East. Iraq also has the sweetest crude, meaning that the crude oil of Iraq has the lowest sulfur content. Why is that important? It's important for two reasons. Number one, it means it's much more easily refined to go to market to the consumer. But second, and this is going to change, but today only about 1/3 of refined petroleum is used in the combustion engine. 2/3 is used for the production of glass, plastics, textiles, pharmaceuticals, electronics, and nanotechnologies. In short, there's not enough wind and solar in the universe to produce one smartphone, which is why the whole Green New Deal thing, in my view, is a scam, but we can get into that at a later date. But despite the fact that Iraqi crude has the lowest sulfur content, making it the sweetest crude, Iraq has the largest known sulfur reserves in the Middle East. And sulfur is necessary for the production of sulfuric acid, which is used in a great number of industrial applications. So Iraq has it coming and going. It's an embarrassment of wealth. Then there's the fact that Iraq is located in the Tigris-Euphrates River Delta. So for thousands of years, the silt has flown down from the Caucasus mountain range in Iran, of all places, down into this river delta, meaning that it's rich with all kinds of rare earth metals, precious metals, industrial metals, and because it's a river delta, it's also easily mined. Again, this is another source of diversified revenue for the country as well. Then there's the issue of their location geopolitically. Iraq is located between the Shia of Iran and the Sunni of Saudi Arabia. It's also the gateway between the East and the West. And it's also critical to China that's reestablishing the Silk Road through the Silk Road Initiative to create a trade route from China all the way to Europe. So Iraq seems to really be in the sweet spot, and this is why they need a currency. This is why they will have a currency. This is why it's only a matter of when, not if this was to occur. Now, having said all of that, let's turn to those of us that do have currencies and what we can expect. When you're in a situation where you own an asset, whether it's property, whether it's specific business contracts, or an asset like these currencies, that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value, you want to ensure that you do not lose that newfound wealth. And to that end, Trusts Unlimited has put a turnkey program in place to assist you. This program, first, pre-RV, Phase 1, is for the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts. Phase 2, which is post-RV, for all the products, services, and professional referrals that will be available to those of you who have established this trust package. Now, there are ample reasons why any American citizen should establish this package, and we'll get into that a little later. But I want to talk more specifically about why it's necessary to establish this package prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. First, by establishing this pre-RV package, you will preserve and protect your privacy and your anonymity. That's because no one will know your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this package, you're going to be able to avoid IRS scrutiny. If you're holding these currencies in direct title, I can assure you, based on the magnitude of this revaluation, you're looking at not only an IRS audit, but probably a 6-year audit. However, if you have established this trust and assign your currencies to the trust, then this revaluation will occur within the trust. It's unlikely that the IRS will get involved at that point. There's less than a 15% chance of an IRS audit if this revaluation were to occur within a rather sophisticated trust package such as ours. Second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit the trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. Third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currencies to family and friends. Philanthropic gifting can always be done on a tax-preferred basis, either pre- or post-RV. But in order to avoid a substantial 40% federal gift tax, you're going to need to give currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves, or giving them the post-RV lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, you can gift it to them through the specially designed gift subtrust that's part of our package. And because you're gifting through that subtrust, you will be able to directly manage, invest, and distribute the money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. By doing so, there will be no probate, there will be no public disclosure of your estate, your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance. Then there's the issue of the federal estate tax. The federal estate tax, beyond the approximate $10 million exemption, which, by the way, the Democrats in Congress want to reduce to $1 million, but assuming the law stays in place, everything above $10 million can be taxed as much as 65%. But if your money's in this trust, there will be no federal estate tax. So your heirs will not only have immediate access to their inheritance, there will be no federal estate tax, and they'll get 100 cents on the dollar. Fifth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What that means is you can only be sued under our system of civil procedure for what you actually own in title, or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So if you have, for example, 10 million dinar, you transfer them to the trust pre-RV, you paid approximately $10,000 for the currency. Let's say it revalues for $1, and post-RV it's worth $10 million. Well, you can't be sued for $10 million. You can only be sued for $10,000 because that's all the currency, the property, was worth when you transferred it out of title to the trust. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This is accomplished through a strategy called segregation of assets. This is why we have a package of trusts. You put each asset you own into one of the sub-trusts. So if any of those assets, like a car in a car accident, gets involved in an accident, the only thing that would be involved in the litigation would be what's in that car trust, not any of your other assets and net worth that are all part of other sub-trusts within that trust package. So if you're a denarian or a person that has an asset that you think is going to appreciate substantially, behooves you to establish this trust and transfer your assets to that trust to protect your privacy, to protect your anonymity, to protect you from civil litigation, to protect you from probate and the federal estate tax. But beyond that, what does this trust package do for the average citizen? Well, to discuss that, we need to backtrack a little bit and talk about the situation we find ourselves in. First, I want to talk a little bit about the Constitution and our rights under the Constitution. First, I want to talk about Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Quote, Congress shall have the power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and a foreign coin. What does that mean? It means that the Constitution makes provisions for the government to print currency for us to utilize in society in exchange for goods and services. I don't want to go into a long discussion about central bank history, but something happened. The 16th Amendment happened. What's the 16th Amendment? The 16th Amendment was ratified under an Article 5 Constitutional Convention in 1913, resulting in the creation of the federal income tax and the Federal Reserve. Well, what is the Federal Reserve? First of all, it's not a federal agency. It's a private corporation, and there is no reserve. But it's the language the federal government used to obscure what they were doing to us. The Federal Reserve is a central bank. And what does a central bank do? It literally prints money and lends it to the government. And the government pays that loan back through a federal income tax. So rather than the government simply coining currency for us to utilize, they went to a private organization which literally creates the money out of nothing, lends it to the federal government, and the federal government pays the loan back by taxing all of us. Now, this was accomplished through something called an Article 5 convention. An Article 5 convention is a convention where 2/3 of the states get together to amend the Constitution, whether they're amending an existing whether they're amending the Constitution or creating a new amendment, which is what they did with the 16th Amendment. Another example would be the Equal Rights Amendment, which never passed. The Equal Rights Amendment, the government could not pass through the government. They couldn't get 2/3 ratification in the House and Senate, so they had to go the Article 5 constitutional route. Well, it took 38 states to create the Equal Rights Amendment, and they could not get 38 states to agree. That's why it fell away. But in the case of the federal income tax, it did get through. It got through based on a lie. And here's the lie. If the states would ratify through an Article 5 convention the federal income tax, the tax, listen to this, would only be a 7% income tax on earnings in excess of $500,000. Well, we know that's not how the federal income tax works. So that's the problem. The Federal Reserve is a private corporation that creates currency out of nothing, lends it to the federal government, taxes the citizens through the federal income tax, and the Federal Reserve, since its inception, has never been audited. Now, the reason I discuss all of this is because, once again, we need to understand the direction of what's going on here and why you need to establish a trust. Now, the next phase of what the Federal Reserve is doing, as far as I'm concerned, this is the kill shot. This is the creation of a central bank digital currency. And this is what we're on the verge of experiencing. Pursuant to Executive Order 14067, to be effective on December 13th of 2022, Biden and company are transitioning us to a national digital currency, which they say is both safe and liquid. A lie on both counts. This currency is not safe, as we witness from routine hacks into government programs all the time. In addition, an EMP weapon, electromagnetic pulse weapon, would destroy all digital records, inclusive of our digital currency. In addition, unlike hard currencies, you must and can only do two things with a digital currency. You either leave it with the Treasury Department wallet, or you can exchange it for a good or service. You cannot put it in your pocket. You cannot do anything with it without the express knowledge and consent of the federal government. This would also allow the government to limit purchases of certain items, freeze or confiscate temporarily or permanently your digital currency? Should they disapprove of purchases or even your public views? Now, if you doubt me, some of the language used in the discussions and debate about the digital currency specifically reference China's social credit score system. So if you want to know where they're going with all of this, you can just Google China's social credit score system. Now, the way you're going to protect yourself through this trust is through the establishment of income-producing tangible assets. We can show you how to do that. Now, it's true that some of that income would be exposed to the central bank digital currency, but the vast amount of your wealth would be out of the central bank system and out of their control. There are additionally other things we can do, talking about offshore entities, operating outside of the Swiss system, all of these things. But it's important that you understand that the establishment of a trust is not only for those of us that have currencies that we anticipate a substantial increase in value, but anyone that wants to operate outside of the central bank digital currency and the unfettered control that they have granted themselves through a digital currency. Now, I don't want to get, again, too far into the weeds, but I want to explain in just a little bit more detail what their objective is here. I'm moving around with all these papers. I have notes all over the place, so just give me a moment. There we go. There's some things I think you need to Google. But what they're trying to establish, in my opinion, and the only other term I can use for it is neo-feudalism. What is a feudal state? It's a state with no middle class. In the initial feudal state, what we had was the royalty, and we had the serfs. In a neo-feudal state, we have the elite, and we have the working drone class. That's us. And how do they eliminate the middle class? Well, first they crush us in a vice between inflation and taxation. What have we seen over the last 2 years? We've seen an unprecedented amount of printing of money, which has created inflation, and we've seen doubling of the size of the IRS with 87,000 new agents. Once again, crushing us with what? Inflation and taxation. We've also seen the attempt to create an electric grid by electrifying everything, by eliminating fossil fuels. Just recently, they made their first attempt to destroy gas stoves. They want everything operated on electric. Why? Because they can centralize that and they can control that. And last, most importantly, through international corporations like BlackRock and Vanguard, they are doing the best they can to quietly but systematically buy up farmland and residential property. Why? Because they want us living in their concrete chicken coops in a centralized area. They want control of the land. They want control of the supply chains. They want control of the food production. And by purchasing residential properties, they can convert them to larger high-rises and, once again, eliminate the middle class. Now, the reason I'm getting into all of this is because one of the ways you can protect yourself is through the creation of a trust, such as ours, to make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for them to confiscate from us the things we possess. Now, these trusts are settled law, black-letter law in Western law, Western civilization, Western culture. They go all the way back to the Caesars of Rome, to the royalty of Europe, to the land grants in the United States prior to the creation of the United States and our Constitution. The ability to put assets in trust, to protect them, and to be able to pass them on to our family without intrusive government involvement. So that's why this is incredibly important. I'm going to give you more information about our trust. But again, there's some things I think you need to look into. I would suggest you Google the World Economic Forum and read their charter. I suggest you Google ESG, which is the Environmental Social Governance Board, what they have in store for us. I suggest you Google Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050. I also suggest you Google something called Cloward, C-L-O-W-A-R-D, and Piven, P-I-V-E-N. Cloward and Piven is basically explaining, in terms of the United States itself, an open border welfare state, the elimination of nation states, the elimination of borders, the elimination of private property, and the elimination of the middle class. This is their objective. Everything they're doing is moving in that direction. But they have a problem. The problem they have is the United States, and the problem the left in the United States has is our Constitution. And embedded in that Constitution is your Fourth Amendment right to privacy and your right to contract. And this is what you do when you establish the right trust. You've protected yourself and your family. You've protected your privacy. You've protected yourself from civil litigation. You've protected your right to transfer your assets to your family. And you've minimized the government's ability to intrude into these objectives. Now, once again, the central bank digital currency is going to be a problem, but there's ways that you can minimize your exposure to that, again, through the purchase of certain income-producing tangible assets, and we can show you how to do that and to operate as much as possible outside of the central bank digital currency system. Now, our trust package is an initial package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV and financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one gift sub-trust if you do wish to gift currencies to family and friends and manage the post-RV proceeds, but which sub-trust can be converted to a standard sub-trust, and then 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was initially a trust package that we established for our more affluent clients, which had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Dinarians, we knew that that price tag would be unaffordable for many. So by simplifying the package, we've reduced the cost to $3,000. Now, that can be paid for in a number of ways. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we even have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which sum would basically offset our out-of-pocket cost. And then the balance would be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the Iraqi dinar revalues globally, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for establishing their trust pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than the $100 a month you pay under our deferred payment arrangement. Now, before we close, again, I'm sorry that we can't go to a Q&A, but my phone's blowing up as we speak. I wanted to touch on one other thing, and it is, again, our civil system of law. I'm looking right now for something I wanted to review with you, and I've just got too much on my desk, so let me see if I can locate this very quickly. Give me one more moment here. Here we go. Once this currency is revalued, you will be a wealthy individual. Now, statistically, 1 out of 4 individuals is sued. And 40% of all lawsuits are frivolous lawsuits, meaning that individuals are just filing nuisance suits. They just want a little bit of money and they're going to go away. And there's a simple way to avoid all of this, and it's simply by assigning your currencies to our trust and then housing all of that newfound wealth within the trust. Now, it's under our system of civil procedure that you can lose control of assets or lose them outright if they're owned in direct title. If you've lived for any length of time, you've experienced in your own life things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are, of course, investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trust Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. Now, if the things we've discussed on this call today are of interest to you, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but again, you're under absolutely no obligation to do so. The package has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the currencies, and about the general litigation situation in this country. You can review the package. Contact us if you have any questions by either phone or email. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. But again, if you decide to proceed and that's your decision, everything you need is included in the package. Now, you can go to our website to learn more about us. That's trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com, and our phone service is 307-274-4122. I strongly suggest you consider the things we discussed here today. I strongly suggest you Google the information I suggested you look into to understand more fully exactly what they're trying to do to us. And when you've done all of that, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial package. We'll assist you in every way. And if you wish to proceed, everything you need is included in that package. Our next call is scheduled, of course, for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week.